Well, next up on the show, the centre again today opposed the Supreme Court hearing of requests seeking legal sanction for same-sex marriages, stating that only Parliament can decide the creation of a new social relationship. But in a significant observation, the Chief Justice said there's no absolute concept of a man or an absolute concept of a woman at all. So that's important because if you look at the Special Marriage Act, then presently the definition of a man and a woman are very clear and very spelled out. But if that definition is much more fluid, as members of the LGBTQI community repeatedly argue, then perhaps the Special Marriage Act as we know it now needs to be construed differently, but that's what the court's going to decide. Joining us, Shayantika Mojumdar and Nikita Prakash. They are a couple and obviously looking at this all very, very closely indeed. Tanushree Bhalla, petitioner, in this case joins us as well. She's a lawyer, a jurist and gender expert. Raga De Silva is an LGBT influencer. Shashank Shekhar Jha is an advocate in the Supreme Court. He opposes same-sex marriage. He has a lot of concerns. And Dr. Geeta Bhatt has her set of concerns as well. Shashank, let me come to you first because, what the judge said today, I think it was the Chief Justice, who said that the Special Marriage Act says man and woman, the very notion of a man and a woman is not an absolute based on their genitals, right? So therefore, when you're arguing legally, right, saying that, there is a traditional definition of a man and a woman based on their physiology, if that entire argument is thrown out, and relationships and gender is deemed to be entirely fluid, then how do present laws apply at all?
Namaste Vishnuji and your fellow panelists. Vishnuji, though Supreme Court have observed that the notion of marriage has changed in past many years as contended by the other side, it was rightly pointed out by the government as well as the amicus curiae now senior lawyer Kapil Sibal, that we need to understand that why Special Marriage Act has been granted. In fact, a particular lawyer has in fact quoted section 19 of the Special Marriage Act, and I will read it for you. Effects of marriage on member of undivided family, which says the marriage solemnized under this act, etc., will be and all those of Hindu religion, Hindu, Buddhist and Jain religions who will be marrying in this will have severe effect for their family. So I guess whatever CGI is saying off the record and which is not the part and parcel of the written order, I guess that should not be considered as the actual outcome of the pending petition. We need to understand that two things have...
But Shashank, before I go across to my other panelists, you've not really answered my question. But let me make it a little bit more specific. After the government argued in court that the Special Marriage Act's intent has been for a relationship between, and I quote, a biological male and a biological female, what the judge said is that it's not the question of what your genitals are, it's much more complex, right? So even when the Special Marriage Act says woman and man, the very notion of a man and a woman, per the Chief Justice, I'm reading his quote, is not an absolute one based on genitals. So therefore, if the definition of sex itself, in terms of gender itself, is fluid now, then how does that not change the entire perception and existing laws and our interpretation of that? That's my question.
Vishnuji, I will be very specific to this question. Now, when the Supreme Court CGI is saying that gender is fluid and all kinds of adoption should be allowed, now government has clearly stated that no, in fact, even Special Marriage Act, which came into existence in 1954, is the outcome of already social norms which is available in the society. And what are the social norms? What does our religion says? What our cultural aspects are? It says that only a biological man and a biological woman can marry, and this cannot be disputed by anyone, irrespective of whichever side he is or he is not. And addition to that, I will just say that Supreme Court also did two more things today, apart from various oral observation. One, Supreme Court categorically stated that it will not interfere the personal laws, including Hindu Marriage Act, which was challenged before this court.
No, but it's the interpretation of that, Shashank, which the Supreme Court will decide on. And the Supreme Court also told the petitioners, Shashank, that look, we will decide, the court will decide whether they can actually look at it or not, because the government has been arguing.
Supreme Court is not going into that. I am so sorry, but Supreme Court, including all 5 judges, has categorically stated that they will not interpret the Hindu Marriage Act, and this entire constitutional bench will confine on only.
No, they are going to. The Supreme Court is going to be looking at it through the prism of the Special Marriage Act, right, Shashank?
Yes.
Okay.
And second point.
Right. Okay, hang on a second. Draga de Silva, let me come to you next. When the judge, as an observation, it's not a ruling or anything as yet, actually makes a statement as profound as this, that it's well beyond genitals. The identity of a person, the notion of a man and the notion of a woman is not absolute at all. Is that not a very progressive way at looking at a very basic issue that all of you have raised for so long? That what is a man and what is a woman? How do you construct a man and a woman? Right? Because identity is entirely fluid. Right? It's not determined by your genitals alone. If that is the case, then doesn't that entire argument give you a lot of hope?
Absolutely. You know, when I heard them talk today in the morning, I was just like, I got off my seat, I clapped my hands, I said, finally, we are speaking the language of the world, really. We are progressive. India is very progressive, but we've been squashed by all these archaic rules by some people who I have no idea why they feel so insecure about providing us and giving us equal rights, as simple as that. So yes, we are not talking about a man and a woman anymore. We're talking about persons. A marriage is a union not just between a biological man and a biological woman.
Exactly.
Marriage is a union between two people. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
The last 200 years may have changed for whatever reasons because of the new laws that we implemented. But that is our religion as well. 200 years ago, this is the language we spoke. We're just asking to relearn that language. Society, please relearn this language.
Shayantika, Nikita, any one of you, are you hopeful of there being progress? You've been a couple for how long?
4 years, yes.
You've been and you'd like to get married, you know?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. So that being the case, you're really looking at this very, very closely. Are you filled with hope? Because let's face it, the arguments raised by the government are strong. They've been arguing, for example, that look, it's not for the courts to decide all of this, besides a whole lot of other things. But do you feel that your case is strong?
See, more than filled with hope, I would say we feel that it's long overdue. It is the right time for this, and it is way more than long overdue, because as Indian citizens, we should have the same rights as every other citizen of India. We are tax-paying citizens of India. If a street citizen of India has the right to get married, so should we. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as a basic right. Marriage should not be restricted to only, like the center said before, like marriage should not be restricted to only a biological man or a woman. In fact, the concept of gender itself is so fluid, like the CGI correctly put forth. Marriage is a union that is observed by our law, that is validated by our law, and that should not be the privilege of certain sexual orientations and genders. Because right now, it is only limited to a privilege. It is not just about a big fat wedding, right? It is also about all the laws that street people get to enjoy that come with marriage, which are denied to us.
I'll just come to that in a moment. Nikita, the argument which has been given in the Supreme Court yesterday was that same-sex marriage is an elite construct, right, for social justification. How would you respond to that?
I'm quite surprised with this statement, actually. I do not understand. People are getting married everywhere in this country. The love is not defined by pin codes, right? We are more privileged to talk about it, but there are so many voices which are hidden and not getting amplified and not getting the opportunity to even come out and talk about it. So many people are closeted. So there is so much stigma in the society already about this. Luckily, thankfully, at least the decriminalization of 377 has helped us gain some space and given us the courage to be more visible. And and for the rural areas or the not so elite, also, they are also suffering.
It's not like there's a border to being gay. It's not like when you leave outside the city, your rainbows fade away. People are gay everywhere, whether they are in a city or whether they are in rural
That's an interesting. Your rainbows don't fade away once you move out of a city. But I take your point, Geeta ji. There's another argument that was raised today by Menika Guruswamy, who's been a champion for this cause, has been one of the petitioners when Section 377 was decriminalized. She said, and I quote, "Marriage is a question of rights. I'm not able to notify my partner to life insurance. I cannot buy insurance from the Supreme Court Bar Association for my family." So that's what it is all about. It's not just about two people coming together and wanting to live in a marriage. It's also about rights and a whole lot of other rights. So since we are all equal in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the Constitution, shouldn't this sort of follow same-sex marriage?
Well, Vishnuji, I would like to make a couple of points.
Go ahead.
Here. Yeah. First is that if you look as per our Indian tradition, as you said that it is if you look in our old scriptures, there the individuals at times were being addressed as "Hey Atman." Atma, that it is not a man or a woman, but a Atma, which I don't think soul would be an appropriate English translation. But the fact remains that concept of Ardhanarishwar was present in the Indian context.
Yes.
So there was always a space and always has been a space for people from third gender or those who believe in homosexuality. And we see in Kama Sutra written by Rishi Vatsayan, it very well elaborates on that. So that space was always there in the society for people who were not oriented in a particular way in terms of their conjugal relationships. Now, the point over here is that if you look, which is in contrary to the European countries where till late 1970s homosexuality was criminalized. In fact, in countries like Spain till Second World War, homosexuality could lead to death sentence. So that contradiction, because time and again, even in the court, I was listening to the proceedings. Time and again, there were, the example of US and European laws were being given. Let us also not forget that US is the same country where the right of a woman to terminate her pregnancy, what it stands for, in contrast to what law we have in India. Please keep that also in mind. So my point over here is that as far as if you are talking in terms of giving a legal surety or a legal cover to a partner or to a relationship, just like in live-in relationships also we have seen that there is a provision for providing a legal surety or a legal cover to those people who are not in a
no, Geeta ji, we are using the M word over here, marriage. They already have live-in relationships, already have legal protection. We are only talking about marriage over here.
Yes. Give me just 20 seconds. So,
please.
My point over here is that when you are talking of marriage, the whole definition of marriage, first of all, because it is not so simple. First of all, how you define marriage will have to be, have to be looked into. And based on that, then you can decide how other things have to be notified. Secondly, right now we are
but
saying...
Geeta ji, let me interrupt you to just ask a very basic question. Geeta ji, a very basic question to you. Aren't we, as Hindus in our country, equal in the eyes of God? Aren't our fellow panelists over here, right?
Definitely.
Aren't they all equal in the eyes of God? Because they're certainly equal in the eyes of the Constitution. If we are all equal in the eyes of God, then why don't we, for example, throw away this entire argument that, our religion and old traditions have said one thing. Ultimately, the more profound aspect of our faith is that we are all, for example, in Hinduism, we are all equal in the eyes of our God. That's what we aspire to. So if anybody else seeks to be equal in their relationship, they're just the same as us.
See,
what difference does it make, Geeta ji?
The point is that my point is that I would like, for example, I would like to relate it. Today we so much talk about, there are so much environment concerns. We say that there is a climate challenge, climate change is happening, there is a challenge happening because we are abusing nature all right, all out. Now,
in nature, it is, it is in a man and a woman relationship. It is in consonance with what is there in nature because it believes
Okay,
in
so basically you're saying that
Now
a gay
the point
relationship is unnatural.
Just give me 10
Okay,
seconds.
all right.
This is a
But
legal
Geeta ji, you
aspect.
made your point. Let me keep it road.
Not. What about the sex?
Okay. I'll try and come back to you, I promise. But Raghav, what Geeta ji actually does refer to is perhaps the strongest criticism of gay relationships, that it's unnatural. How do you respond?
Well, I'll say that I don't know what unnatural means. I've been married to my same-sex partner. Sorry, before anybody questions it, I've been legally married because I live in the UK. And yes, I'm an Indian woman, very happily married to my Kiwi partner. And we've been together for 16 years and we have raised our twins who are now 25 years together. So all these questions and all these arguments that I hear all the time that it is unnatural, I keep saying, what is unnatural? Instead of defining and spending so much time arguing about defining marriage, why don't you sit back and define what is unnatural? Because I think love is the most natural thing. See, the problem is, Geeta ji, to respond to you, I think the problem is that we've forgotten that in marriage is a union of love between two people. You said the word Atma. It cannot be we've forgotten over time that because the kind of heterosexual relationships are, that marriage is just between two biological nature. Love is the most natural thing in this world. And if we can't respect love, then I don't know how we cannot understand the concept of marriage.
Yeah, can I come in?
Just quickly, Geeta, because Tanushri's been waiting very patiently. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, look, see, I think my point was not to bring it forward that this is whether it is natural or unnatural, but the fact remains here is that, when we are talking about, there are two aspects that have to be looked because we are trying to look at it from the legal aspect as well as from the social aspect. So, though the argument is being put forth that this will be put under the Special Marriage Act.
Okay.
But we do understand that the Special Marriage Act came into being because there were people who were from different faiths who wanted to come together, man and woman who wanted to come together into union of marriage. Now when you are trying to talk about people of same-sexuality, at that point, will it be possible to keep faith out of it? Because marriage,
okay, will it be possible to keep faith out of it? Let me take that question across to Tanushri Bhalla. She's a petitioner in this case. Geeta, got it. Let's get an answer to your, Geeta ji, to your question. How can you keep faith out of it? Tanushri is a petitioner in this case. We are defined by past traditions, social mores and religion. And therefore, how do you keep religion out of it?
First of all, Vishnu, thank you for having me and thank you for finally giving me the chance to speak. I've been waiting to address Mr. Jha for a long time. In fact, he was one of the reasons I wanted to address this particular debate. Ideally, we should be arguing in the court, so I will keep it very restricted to what is already on the court.
Go ahead.
We leave the decision to the judiciary. So Mr. Jha particularly very clearly pointed out that our social mores, our culture, our religion and this and that. And what exact religion is he relying on? We are not a 1,000-year-old civilization, sir. We are a 7,000-year-old civilization, in fact, even beyond that. And there are enough examples in our mythology, in our theology, even in the Mahabharata, there are examples where same-sex marriages have happened till modern date. I mean, ma'am just pointed out that she is happily legally married to her same-sex partner, but I'm pretty sure that if Mr. Jha actually goes back, he will actually find that our scriptures and not the colonially translated scriptures, our original Hindu scriptures actually forbid marrying any man. I'm speaking to man right now because that is what the shloka says, to a woman if he is not, of an orientation that can procreate with the woman. It is actually forbidden in our culture and I can prove that in the court. I have already put that research. I am a researcher. We have already placed this. It is for the courts, honorable courts to decide. So I won't comment anything further. But I am pretty sure that Mr. Jha, I hope that he would perhaps go through that intervention before addressing this question.
Shashank, go ahead, respond.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Supreme, I will be very clear and candid. There were two requests from the Supreme Court today. That was for declaration and recognition of same-sex marriage. Okay, and after listening to the opening arguments of both the sides, Supreme Court has categorically stated that it will not interfere into personal marriages. So whoever is saying over your show that we will have such arguments etc. will not be counted before the court at all. Now, as far as Special Marriage Act is concerned, less than 1% of the Indian population get registered under same Special Marriage Act. But the problem is, if you grant this permission under Special Marriage Act and the recognition and declaration as demanded by the petitioners, the problem is there are n number of other laws which will have a ramification over them. For example, there are inheritance laws, there are adoption laws, there are custody laws, etc., etc. So how will you deal with those? That is the problem.
If I may answer that.
And the accurate forum to decide all these, because Supreme Court is doing it in a very constructive manner. So if you have to look into every aspect, the Parliament is the right forum, as already stated by the Government of India.
Okay, Nikita, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, any kind of change coming into a society will obviously create some kind of disruption, and people will take time to accept it. I mean, there have been so many things that we have experienced over the years. The way the marriage law in itself has evolved over the years. Like child marriage,
things
dowry.
that were considered traditionally part of Indian marriage, like dowry, has been banned, right? Things have legally evolved even in the context of an understanding of what marriage is, whether it's in a religious context, whether it's in a social context. Both of it has been tackled over time. If we can evolve past all of that, why can't we evolve our understanding of marriage right now? And secondly, to answer,
Well, that really is the question. Why can't we evolve right now? Why are we stuck in our present and possibly even stuck in the past? Look, I'm out of time.
We are a country that changed its currency overnight. I don't know why we can't change marriage.
If I may add just one point, I'm sorry to intervene because it has been a long time, because that was the first question over the physical man and the biological man and the gender and everything. So I would like to explain to Mr. Jha that there is one biological sex, which is what you are by birth. And you also have intersex persons in that. They may not always be like hermaphrodites as in dual sexed. They may also be without sex, neither sex.
Right.
Now, and that is a purely biological thing. Transgenders.
The individual categorization cannot.
Please let me complete. Please let me complete.
All right. So look. I need to wrap
Let
this
me
up because I need to move on. But
Please
that
let me
is the
complete.
point, Tanushree, we have referred to, that gender is fluid, identity is fluid as well. And we'll certainly look at that more closely later on. Thanks very much. Fascinating debate and an issue which is going to be heard out in court.